So I want to talk to the effect of all this, because while we're having this discussion, it will affect a lot of people who've been in similar situations. Joining me now is Chris Tuck, who's a child sex abuse activist. Chris, thank you so much for joining me today. I first do want to acknowledge that this whole issue, and seeing it on every newspaper headline, is going to be triggering for a lot of people. Would I be right in saying that?
Absolutely, Trisha, absolutely. Anything like this that comes up in the news, and it does come up on a very regular basis, almost daily, will be triggering to a victim and survivor of sexual assault, sexual abuse, rape, whatever their situation is. It will be triggering for them.
Because we often think of when we talk about sexual abuse or child sexual abuse, we often think of older male, very young child, that's it. But the nuances and the shades in between, would I be right in saying, because we have that misconception of that's what sexual abuse is, many people who are on the receiving end of sexual abuse don't see it like that. No, it's not sexual abuse. He really just likes me, because we don't spell out the many forms it can take.
Absolutely. Education and awareness around this whole topic does need to improve, and it does need to hit the whole of society because of all of the nuances that you've explained. Often victim and survivors, especially vulnerable young people, don't know that they're actually being abused. They don't know they've actually been groomed. Sometimes it can be a power dynamic within the relationship between the adult and the young person, and that young person can think that they're in a legitimate relationship, but actually they're being groomed, they're being exploited, and for the purpose of the adult that's entered that relationship. And the young person can obviously feel that, you know, everybody on the outside is against their relationship because they don't understand they're actually being abused and exploited.
Now, you make such a good point there. Now, the word groomed, again, when people think of grooms, they think children being groomed. They think of gangs. I do think many newspaper headlines make us think that that's what grooming is, without talking about the subtlety of it. And therefore, a young person can miss those cues because they see it in literally in print, in black and white. Just talk us through, what is groom? What can it look like? How subtle can it be?
If you think of a vulnerable child that isn't coming from a loving, caring household, for example, they're brought up in chaos, and that can be any household throughout, you know, England and Wales, for example, you will look for a sense of belonging. You will look for someone that's going to be kind to you. So you're vulnerable to all of that if you don't get that in your everyday life. So you're going to be seeking out those people that are going to be kind to you, going to be nice to you, going to potentially buy things for you. Not in every case, but in some cases. So you're going to look for love and nurture outside of the family home if you're not getting that. And then that is where grooming can take place, because groomers can seek out those young people because they can see the vulnerability. And if you listen to any sexual offenders that have been caught and convicted, that's what they will tell you. They will look for those children and young people that are vulnerable, that are not getting something in their lives. And that's how a potential perpetrator can access a child or young person.
And would I also be right in saying a child or a young person could come from a pretty good, solid family background, but be in those teenage years where they feel they might be mum or dad maybe not at home, so wants to engage with a man taking interest in them or what have you, but they might also, the family might be okay, but their siblings, and I know, I'm doing it as a mum, teenagers often go through that, nobody loves me, nobody understands me and what have you, and hey presto,
100%.
hey
100%.
presto,
a victim and survivor can come from any background, any socio-economic, any community. a victim can be anybody, and a perpetrator can be anybody. And that's what we've got to get our minds around.
Yeah, a perpetrator can be anybody again, because there again, it can be anyone at all. Now, let's talk about power dynamic. Let's add to that, because I've had this question of the day about why it tends to be quote unquote alpha males. We're not saying that all abusers are males, but we are saying that, I'm sorry, but the vast majority are, or have I got that completely wrong?
No, you haven't got it. It is a gendered crime. If you look at the stats, if you look at the research, it is a gendered crime. However, there are more female perpetrators than what society would like to acknowledge,
Really?
and what is spoken about generally. But it is a male dominant crime, but there are more female perpetrators than what we do speak about. Ooh. So I do want to bring a bit of balance into this.
Yeah, please do. And because I've read a lot of the times where a lot of the male perpetrators are assisted by females, because Absolutely. Again, a younger person, or any person, they're not necessarily a young person, but a vulnerable person thinks, oh, well, there's a woman here, so it must all be okay. In my head.
Yeah. It presents a sort of safe situation when there's a male and a female acting together when it comes to these cases. So if you look at Fred and Rose West, for example, so where there's a bit of a maternal relationship there, where the woman can use that to gain access to children and young people. That does seem to be a pattern in certain cases where there's a male and a female working together. And often if you look at grooming gangs or organised networks, you'll see that as well, that dynamic where there is a male perpetrator and a female perpetrator working together to access the victims, and then they carry out their crimes. So it is male dominant, but there are more female perpetrators than what we would like to recognise and acknowledge. And also we need to keep coming back, Trisha, to most abuse takes place in the home environment. Then you've got abuse.
We always talk about strangers, don't we? Hey, and you know what? You've hit on something. When as we know with the stats, most abuse is in the home environment. Here's something. In this particular case, but in other cases, let's say in this case, if the abuser or somebody, often, and I've been told this, not as an abuser, when you're on telly all the time, people see you almost as part of the family, don't they? That you're in a powerful position, and that if you start taking interest in anybody, this is so-and-so off the telly, and their social cachet. Number one, it must be safe, because everybody watches them on the television. They might be a family household name or what have you. And number two, they're in that position. Anything they shower with me, they shower me with, they've got money, all of this, I'm super special, and they can't be doing anything bad because they're literally part of the family, because they're on telly every day. Could that be what's going on in this situation?
I think anyone can have their heads turned by someone that has got a big profile, whether they be on TV, in the media, or even the head of your community. Yeah, you could have your head turned by someone. So even think about the family dynamic. The head of the family has that position of power and control over the people around them. So it doesn't matter if you look at whatever institution, whether you look at the media, whether you look at the family or a community leader, they have a certain position of power, position of trust within that child or young person's life. And that's what we've got to hook into, is that power dynamic. And often we're told, respect your elders, or maybe if it's in an organisation and you're working your way up the ladder and you're getting help by someone that is higher up in their career, there is a power dynamic there that needs to be not exploited, and it needs to be understood by both parties, I think, in order for those people to protect themselves as well from nothing going wrong, or, like today,
Another brilliant point, because we talk about educating people who are likely to be abused, but there are those grey areas, aren't they, of people in those positions that you've just talked about, not unwittingly, because everybody's like gathering around. I'm thinking with church elders as well. This has cropped up a lot all over the world, especially in the United States. But you've got that realizing that the very thin boundary they can be guilty of stepping over, and starting that process, because I'm sure a lot of people in this position unwittingly, I mean, they kind of wade into they're ankle deep in the water. Before they know it, they're literally up to their necks in it.
I do think there might be some people that may cross that line unwittingly, depending on what it is that's gone wrong. But I think perpetrators know exactly what they're doing. They
use
see
that
the
power.
situation, they manipulate it, and they go after what they want. And if anyone stands in their way, they're brushed aside. Yeah. But what I want to really talk about as well, Trisha, is the people around these perpetrators. If you see something, if you hear something, if you have a gut instinct that something's not right, you have a duty of care to speak up.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just do. Yeah. We can't keep having these cover-ups within institutions. It can't keep happening. We always hear, oh, I heard a rumour. Well, I'm sorry, but rumour after rumour after rumour, there's going to be some fire to that. So can someone in a position of responsibility please check out the rumours and make sure there is no foundations to it? And if there are foundations to it, you're responsible for sorting that out. Yeah. And if there are no foundations to it, then make sure that everybody knows what the outcome is, so that people that are being accused of something that they're not responsible for, their names are not tarred and their reputations are not trashed. Because we need to make sure we are transparent, open and honest in how we deal with all of these kind of cases, so everyone knows where they stand, and then that the victim and survivor of these cases can get the interventions that they need and get the support that they need.